Hello, I'm Celia Lozano Pérez. I'm doing my PhD on the linguistics of humor, and today I'll be talking about humor in monologic videos and podcasts. This is the order that we are going to follow. We will quickly go over the introduction, the theoretical framework, so we can focus a little bit more on the methodology, the results, and the conclusions. Before we begin our in-depth analysis, we must explain what monologic videos and podcasts are. These are audio or video files distributed over the internet. We chose the ones that were kind of humorous and made by women. Our basic aim was to characterize these genres from a receptor point of view. This is really important because, unlike most comedic genres like the monologue, the monologic videos and podcasts are usually seen or watched in private. And in regards to our theoretical framework, we divided our research in theories of humor and theories of discourse genres. And our work was based on the general theory of verbal humor from Matardo and Raskin, and we also kept in mind the contribution to the field of Leonard Ruiz. On the other hand, when we talk about the theories of discourse genres, we will use the work of Leonard Ruiz about the humoristic monologue and the work of Breathe from the colloquial conversation. Next, we will talk about our methodology. We think this part is quite important because we didn't have any other work to use as a reference. So we had to make our own methodology. Let's continue. These are the samples that we chose. There are 3 monologic samples and 3 dialogical samples. We will explain this when we talk about the participants. First, we chose or we made a call on social media explaining our research, and we were contacted by plenty of people, but we chose the ones that were in the same age range and that had the kind of similar educational level. Their job was to highlight the segments of the audios that they thought were funny. They were 15 and were divided in 3 main groups, Group A, B, and C. Every group had to listen to one monologue and one dialogue. And as I've said earlier, they had to highlight, while they were listening to them, they had to highlight those segments that they thought were kind of funny. This is the monologic samples, the dialogic samples, and the divisions of the groups. In regards to the transcriptions, all the audios are in YouTube, so if you want to hear them, they are there. But we download them and we put them on CapCut so we could have the transcription. We then use the extension Biyauyon, which made those captions in a full-on text, and we copy and pasted it on Google Docs. The Google Docs and the audio are the files that we send to the participants. Next, we will explain the type of test that we made. First, we choose the Fleiss Kappa test. This type of equation measures the level of agreement between a group of people, and we derivate it manually, but then we checked it on Excel. Next, we will talk about the qualitative test. This is just Google Forms that we send the participants when we finish everything. So they talk a little bit more about their experience and what their impressions were. Finally, we will talk about the results of our research. First, we will characterize these discourse genres, and we will then talk about the results of the Fleiss Kappa and the questionnaires. It must be noted that the characterization of the discursive genres is made by contrast. As we have said earlier, we choose the Leonor Ruiz Gurillo and Antonio Briz work to do this. Okay, first we have the monologic videos. Ruiz Gurillo talks about a series of characteristics of this type of monologues. We will focus on those that are not similar. In the monologic videos, we find that they are in a specific spatial framework. It's usually their room, but there are a lot of things that differ from the traditional monologue. For example, the feedback from the audience is asynchronous. The creators publish the video, and then you can comment it, but it's not immediate. One of the things that we have already mentioned is that this reception is individual, it's private, and there's not usually anyone else in the room. And something that we must talk a little about it's the Planet Oral Register. We put the cursive in that because we think it differs a little bit from the traditional monologue, because in the traditional monologue, the person that does it makes a guide before it, and that's all. Then he goes to states, he does their monologue, and that's it. But in the monologic videos, most of content creators do a script, then they record themselves, and then they edit that. So we think it's even more planned than the normal or traditional humoristic monologues. Next, we will talk about the podcast. As we have said, we use brief word as an example, and we see that there are a lot of things that are in common, but let's say the basics of the colloquial conversations are not seen in the podcast. For example, there is a in-person interaction, there is dynamism, they are really cooperative, but when we talk about unscripted turn talking, we can't really say that that is not scripted, because as we will see here, in the primary characteristics of colloquial speech, we said that it's scripted. So this is really important because in the typical guidelines of the podcast, most of the people talk about how it's really important to have some kind of guide in what you are going to say and who is going to say it. So these two, both of these are a kind of important to differentiate the podcast from the colloquial conversation. Next, we see that the colloquialism features that Breathe talks about, like the relationship of equality, of closeness, and non-specialist topic are quite frequent, and these are the ones that the podcast shares with the colloquial conversation. And here we will talk about the Fleiss Kappa results because they were kind of impressive. We weren't expecting this when we made our research. We thought that given that the podcast and the monologic videos are kind of humorous and have a lot of humorous resources, we will thought that that would be enough for people to agree on what segments were funny and what were not. But that was not the case. There was no agreement at all. As you can see, all the numbers are negative. So that shocked us, and we think it's really important and has something to do with the private reception that we were talking about earlier. In the questionnaires, we found some answers to this, but we must study them because most of the participants were saying that if they were with friends or they were with someone else, maybe they will have highlighted more segments that they did. So this is quite interesting, at least for us, but we couldn't go in deep because there was like a time limit for this research, but we think this is really important. Next, about the things that the participant told us in the questionnaires, we have some characteristics that we think are remarkable. First, they say that if they share the reference, they will laugh more. They will highlight those segments in which the receiver knew what the content creator was talking about. Let's see this one, for example. Here it's Soy una pringada. It's talking about the narcissism. And it's describing the characteristics, and at the end, in the punch, like the punchline is example, Pelayo Diaz. Pelayo Diaz, well, if you don't know, Pelayo Diaz is a famous Spanish stylist and blogger, which is known to be a little bit mean. So if you don't know who is that, you won't probably think this sentence is funny, but as we can see in the bottom, we see an agreement of 4 of the 5 participants. Next, we will talk about the alignment with the generation. As we have discussed earlier, most of the participants were from the same age group, and the content creators, they were also kind of in the same age group. They were a little bit older, but we don't think that's significant enough. So we think they are the same generation. So we ask them some stuff like any other segment will you highlight some other segment, and everyone, well, some participants were saying that if maybe they were younger and maybe they are highlighting those parts because they feel related to certain stuff of the generation, but we will see this better in this example. Here, Albanta and Angela are talking about how harmful certain TV shows or programs are for the younger generations. And then they are talking about that, that every generation has some awful form of content that they have seen, and that cause caused some mental health issues. So here they are referring to Mario Casas. This is a pun because they are talking about A Tres Metros Sobre el Cielo, which is a Spanish film that talks about a toxic love story, and Mario Casas, which is the main actor, it's kind of a big and muscular guy, so they were joking about it. Next, we have the alignment with the speaker. We think this is really important, especially in the case of the monologic videos, because when there's just one person, the participants felt more connected to them. So they talk about that, how they feel like certain situations that the speakers were talking about, like they felt related to them. And then we have that they say that the monologue made them laugh more because she felt incredibly identified with the speaker. So we can see it here in this sentence in which the Mimi XXL talks about how she almost fell, and she said that she saw her life pass before her, and it was just awful. So here there was an agreement of 5 out of 5 participants. So when they felt connected to, like we find that if they felt connected to the speaker, they were more likely to highlight this segment. Finally, we have the alignment with the communicative situation. This is basically related to the podcast because most of the participants felt like the characteristics of the conversation that we have seen made them feel like they were with their group of friends. So there's also a kind of relativity in this. So yeah, they say that there's a back and forth rhythm of joking, and someone said that the dialogue was funnier because they thought that they were with friends. Here we have an example of that. Inés and Andrea from Dulces y Saladas are talking about how they would like to be cancelled, but in a medieval type of way, like someone came to their house and say, "Oh, you're cancelled," and with a little musical instrument. And well, as you can see, they are adding into the joke. Andreas, and they go da 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 da, and Ines finishes like with, "I want them to come to my house," da 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 da. So as we can see, there's a lot of dynamism and cooperation in this segment, and it had an agreement of 4 out of 5 participants. So yeah, we are going to be ending our presentation, and we will talk about our conclusions. First, we must say that we are dealing with 2 closely related genres, but they are not the exact same genre because the number of speakers is really important and makes them have some certain characteristics that make them different from each other. Then we must say that the role of the receiver in every kind of media on the internet, it's really important because they are usually seeing it on private. And next we have the the thing that there seems to be no general agreement on what is humorous and what is not when they are reading or hearing it alone. And to conclude, we must say that a more extensive study should be done of this issue, especially in the podcast field, because we think it has a lot of concrete characteristics that we have not studied yet. And obviously, we must study more about why the receptors are not agreeing on which sentences are humorous and which are not. So this is our bibliography, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoy our little presentation, and if you have any doubts, don't be afraid of asking me. And that's it. Thank you so much for your attention.